After hosting a family gathering, I arranged for my kids to stay with my parents during the holiday season. Shockingly, those heartless individuals left them alone in the house for 3 days. When I confronted them, their response was icy. "We abandoned them, just as you abandoned us when we needed money to settle a debt." My father hissed the words with venom. I immediately retrieved my children, and the following day he showed up groveling, practically on his knees. The last family reunion had ended in chaos, with my father storming out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the kitchen window. We didn't speak for months after that. The root of our conflict was always money. It began when I relocated 20 miles away to a nicer apartment in a different part of Springfield, Illinois, after securing a better-paying job. My wife, Emily, encouraged me to mend things, hoping a holiday gathering could ease the strain. Hesitantly, I invited everyone, my parents, my cousin Mark, and even my father's elusive brother, James. The evening started stiffly with strained smiles, but it was bearable. The kids were playing, dinner was served, and for a fleeting moment it felt like a real family. Then someone mentioned the debt. My father shot me a piercing look, demanding why I hadn't cleared their debt after my promotion. I reminded him I'd offered a loan, but he wanted a handout. He launched into a tirade about family duty, insisting blood meant unwavering support. That sparked Emily's anger and the argument erupted. My father snapped that if I didn't value family, I should stop acting like I did. I stayed quiet, gathered the kids, gave Mark a nod, and walked out. The next day, I still dropped the kids off at my parents' place. It seems inconsistent, I know, but it was only for 3 days while Emily and I attended a work conference in Portland. My mother had pleaded for another chance, saying she longed to see the kids. We left detailed instructions, filled the fridge, and provided emergency numbers. It was just 3 days. Then our neighbor, Tom, called. Tom, a retired man from across the street who usually talked about mundane things, sounded urgent. I could hear my kids sobbing in the background. "Did you know your children are alone?" he asked. Emily thought it was a prank until reality sank in. We booked the earliest flight back. Emily was in tears the entire journey. When we arrived, the kids rushed to us, scared, hungry, and bewildered. The house was cold, dark, and deserted. Moldy food sat on the table. No note, no explanation. They had left my children for 3 days. The front door was unlocked. My daughter's shoes were drenched in something unidentifiable. Crumbs were scattered across the floor. The TV was off. My youngest had cried so much his voice was hoarse. My eldest kept asking if they'd done something wrong. Emily fought back tears as she packed their bags. I roamed the house like a stranger, checking every room. They were gone. Tom was still outside. Before I could speak, he said, "I nearly called the police yesterday but didn't want to make things worse." He looked down at his shoes and admitted he saw my parents leave on the second morning, suitcases in tow, without looking back. My mother was laughing as they drove off. The worst part? They had padlocked the fridge. The kids survived on cereal bars from the pantry. We got back to our apartment around midnight. The kids fell asleep in the car. I left their bags by the door, too exhausted to unpack. Emily made tea and we sat in silence. Then came the text, not a call, a text. "We left you just like you left us when we needed money. Now we're even." Emily stared at the screen, asking if it was real. I wished it wasn't. The next day they showed up. My mother had a fresh manicure. My father wore a pressed collared shirt. She walked in as if she'd just forgotten something trivial. I didn't let them speak. "Where were you?" I demanded. My father shrugged. "We had a hotel booked in Branson, didn't want to waste the deposit." I told him the police might get involved. He scoffed, saying it wasn't a big deal and that he'd left food. When I brought up the locked fridge, my mother blinked as if she'd genuinely forgotten. That night, Mark showed up unexpectedly. He already knew what had happened. He placed a folder on the table, copies of tax documents. My father had boasted at a cookout about cheating the system. Mark had dug deeper. For 2 years, my parents had claimed my kids as dependents, collecting thousands in tax refunds. But that wasn't the worst. "Ever wonder how they paid off that debt so quickly?" Mark asked. "They took a second mortgage on the old house you co-signed for. They never removed my name from the deed." I sank into a chair. Mark's voice was steady. "File charges or they'll keep draining you." Emily didn't wait for my response. She called our lawyer. Then the doorbell rang. It was Tom, looking shaken. "DCFS is investigating. Someone reported it." Before I could ask who, he added, "Your dad's blaming you, saying you left the kids without notice." This wasn't neglect, it was revenge. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Emily. We watched the kids sleep, the dog nestled between them, At 7 a.m., my phone rang, an unfamiliar number. "John, it's your grandfather." I hadn't heard from him in years. "I heard about the kids. They're coming to my place today." He hung up before I could respond. His house was unchanged, quiet with a creaky porch. He sat at the table with a stack of papers and an old journal. "I've been watching your father," he said. "I hoped he'd change, but after what he did to your kids and what he told me, I'm done." My father had called him, claiming I'd neglected the kids and was unstable. My grandfather wasn't fooled. He'd already started transferring the family trust, cutting my father out completely. Then he handed me a photo. My parents, dressed up, holding wine glasses outside a St. Louis casino. "Celebrating your downfall," he said. When I got home, Emily and Mark were waiting. Emily had given a police statement. Mark's lawyer friend had drafted a cease and desist for the tax fraud. The next morning, the school called. My parents had tried to pick up the kids, claiming they had permission. The principal refused, sensing something was wrong. My father shouted that he was still their guardian and that this wasn't over. That was it. I delivered a lawyer's letter to their house, detailing every consequence. The fraud report, the DCFS case, the revoked guardianship, the disinheritance. My father looked stunned. My mother fumbled for excuses. They showed up at our apartment later, begging on their knees. I felt nothing but fatigue. My son walked up, looked at them, then turned away without a word. I shut the door, but it wasn't over. A bank called about a fraudulent account opened in my name. My father was still scheming. I reported it immediately. Mark pushed me to press charges. I hesitated but signed the papers. The police came the next morning. Fraud, child endangerment, tax evasion. Days later, my grandfather called again. He was selling the family lake house to fund college accounts for my kids. "I should have done this sooner," he said. Then he dropped another shock. "I'm moving in with you." When he arrived, he brought my Aunt Claire, my father's estranged sister. "Your dad always resented that I was the favorite," she said with a smirk. That night, my grandfather rewrote the family legacy, transferring everything to me and my children. I didn't stop there. I canceled their HOA privileges, exposed my mother's book club funding, and had my father removed from his cherished community role. His church erased his name from their donor list. Then my mother appeared at my workplace, pleading. "We're going to lose the house," she whispered. I walked away. They came back with a reconciliation plea. I made my father confess everything in front of my kids. My daughter asked why. He had no answer. The final blow came when my father tried to sell my grandfather's rare stamp collection. Aunt Claire caught him. The police recovered some stamps, but most were gone. We pressed charges. The story hit local news. Their faces were blurred, but everyone knew. Now it's done. The kids sleep soundly. My grandfather tends a garden. Claire stays close. Mark visits often. Then an unmarked envelope arrived. A note. "You think you've won?" A USB drive showed my father hiding the stolen stamps in a storage unit. I sent it to the detective. More charges followed. Was it ever about need or just control? Some believe family deserves endless forgiveness. But I saw them lock the fridge while my kids went hungry. I saw them celebrate in a casino as my daughter struggled to open a jar. No, I won't regret cutting them off. What would you do? Would you seek justice or let it go? For me, the answer is clear enough.